Greetings everyone, and welcome back to a series I haven't done in a long time. Here at the Dracovin Empire, we're diving back into the history of Magic the Gathering, talking about its various sets and expansions and products that have happened over the years. I haven't done this in quite a while. Don't ask how long. Anyway, I, your host here, Dracovin, is going to flick you by the hand. Are you ready to planeswalk through the blind eternities and head to an interesting new plane? In this first set that it was featured in? Zendikar? Well then, come with me. Prepare your mana, your spells, and your summons. We're heading through the blind eternities to Zendikar. Whoa! Ah, God, that was a tough trip here. The blind eternities is not pleasant to travel through. Don't worry about it. Anyway, hey, we've arrived on Zendikar. That's neat. Well, what do we know about this place that we're visiting for the first time ever? Well, Zendikar was actually the 50th Magic expansion, released in October of 2009, and the first of the Zendikar Block. You can see its title and symbol here. Its pre-release was held on September 26th and 27th of 2009, and its release event on October 2nd and 4th of the same year. And they did have a game day on the 31st. All important things. Mark Rosewater was the lead designer, Henry Stern the lead developer, with art direction by Jeremy Jarvis. It had themes of lands, quests, and traps. We'll talk about all of them. Keywords of landfall and kicker. Talk about that. 249 cards, of which 101 were common, 60 uncommon, 53 rares, 15 mythic rares, and 20 basic rares. It was known for development as Live in the block. Now we do have a little bit of background. It was Live Long, Prosper were the three sets of the Zendikar block. And the entire idea for development had them coming up with three components. A land component, a mana component, a flavor component. That was the part of their design. Eventually the land and mana would get merged together. But when they talked about the land development, Bill Rose, the vice president of R&D at the time, was skeptical of land being a focus of things. And it took about 40 different mechanics to end up with landfall. Mana, again, we see things like other components of the land set that were being developed, but eventually this did merge in with it. And flavor-wise, it was an adventure world. And the ideas of something that's much more important later on in the block wasn't even on their radar when they were originally developing Zendikar, the Eldrazi. Think about that. The concepts behind the Eldrazi didn't exist when they were beginning to put together Zendikar. That's just a little bit about the background. There are more documents you can kind of see on Magic's site if you want to dive deeper into this background. Alright, let's talk about some set details. It's a land set. I mentioned that. Things are centered around lands. Because, again, we had this kind of mana component and land component that merged together into making a land set. Landfall was there. Enemy fetch lands were there. A big part about it was this. First of these two cards. Full art basic lands. The first time we saw that were unsets, loot, unhinged, things like that. Now again, it's got the name, it's got basic land, it's got the mana symbol, it's got the set symbol all on it. It's got everything that screams to you, it's a basic land, but it's this full art thing. Again, modern Magic are used to this kind of stuff. This was in unsets up until now. This is the first time a normal core Magic product had full art lands. First time. Now these appeared in booster boxes and fat packs. Intro packs had normal basic lands, like the one on the right. Yeah. Intro packs had normal. It was the same art, but not full art. So, and again, if you would look at the collector's number, they have a little A next to the normal ones. The non-full art ones. The full art were regular in this set. We also saw some new planeswalkers, especially Nissa Revane, who, up to this point in time, had been featured in Duels of the Planeswalker. Yeah, a video game that came out before this set featured a planeswalker that would become synonymous with this plane. Now, if we talk story, well, we have to start with the origin of Zendikar, or sort of origin. The first book here, Purifying Fire, is a Planeswalker novel that had alluded to and given some basic information about the plane of Zendikar. It hadn't named it Zendikar at that point in time, but it was a plane of adventures with treasures and potent mana supplies, and mana on the plane works a little differently than the rest of the multiverse. It's littered with hedrons that float in the air or beyond this. And again, we begin to establish this in the other books. The two main books are, of course, Zendikar and the Thief of Akuma, which is about the entire Zendikar Block. So it's about the first third of that book, the first part of that book, is about the Zendikar set. And after that, it goes into the two other sets that exist in this block, Worldwake and Rise of the Eldrazi. The other part here about telling the story is the bottom one here, Journey into the Eye, a webcomic about Chandra and Sarkhan Vol, published in 3 parts, and kind of discussing more of the magic story of this. So these two can represent this plane, the basic idea of it, some planeswalkers traveling to it. This is a place with goblins, elves, vampires. It's the home plane of the core. If core show up anywhere else in the multiverse, they're abducted from there. Core are native to Zendikar. They might appear on Wrath. They might later on appear on Dominaria. But they got there not because they were taken from there, not because they were born there. Tradition. Yeah. We don't have a lot of story for Zendikar. It's pretty much, here's a plane, we're going to show you that plane. We're going to educate you on that plane. We're going to teach you that. Now why am I showing Time Walk here? One of the Power 9. One of the cards that are on the reserve list. Well, because you could get Time Walk. Not a new card, this card in Zendikar. As a promotion, randomly, from some older sets of Zendikar boosters, replacing the land slot, some old cards from mostly Beta Unlimited Antiquities were inserted. Some of them even signed. And these included reserve list cards that were not around the reserve list because at the time, these were not reprints, these were copies they had. It's an old print run. It doesn't violate the policy. We're not printing any new ones. There are things like some anti-cards that didn't appear because of legal reasons and some other cards that, did appear, though, with various problems to them. But yeah, the original dual lands, Power 9, all appeared on here. And a bunch of reserve card lists, and some unreserved cards. I will say there are some unreserved cards. Things like old counter spells, Force of Will, Lightning Bolt, Mishra's Factory, Sinkhole, Soul Ring, all did appear in amongst these too. But the big ones would have been reserve list things like Chaos Orb, Demonic Hordes, Elfin Graveyard, Lich, Sliver Queen, Tabernacle with the Number Veil, and of course the Power 9. Like this friend here, and dual lands. Yeah, this was an interesting. The Priceless Treasures were part of this. Now, marketing. Basically what was sold in. We of course have our standard booster box. 16 card packs. You sell them, you love them. They were the standard for a very long time. There was also 6 card boosters, seen next to there, an interesting one. Intro packs, 5 of them, we'll talk about them a little later on, and of course the big old fat pack at the time. This set was the first one to be sold without tournament packs. Now on the booster packs, we had Ob Nixilis the Fallen, Vampire Lacerator, Nisa Revane, Chandra Blaze, and Sorin Markov. On the 6 card pack, we just had Nisa Revane, and I mentioned the novel that comes with this. So these are the way you could buy the product. Where could you get your cards? Let's talk pre-releases and promos. Well, more than pre-release. So, our first card over here, Rampaging Baloths, that was the promotional card given to those that participated in the pre-release. It's alternate art, and also you would get, next to it there, Celestine Reef, the plane card. Plane Chase, cough, the last history video I just did, was out during this time. So the first of a set of playing cards that was basically promotional during this time period, given out during the pre-release, was here. Now the release card, down below there, was Valakut of the Molten Pinnacle. So that's your card for the release party. And if you went to game day then, you got the full art Nisa's Chosen down in the middle. And if you won that game day, you got the Amiria Angel. There was also a buy a box of Day of Judgment, but we will talk about Day of Judgment, its buy a box card, later on for other reasons, so that's why I left it out here. He did have a little bit of a card. Now, what's the 16th card in here? The 15 other cards include everything you have, as well as the commons, uncommons, rares, the land. Well, it's this stuff here. There were two types of cards that you would find show up as the 16th bonus cards. Tips or tricks, or tokens. The tips and tricks, there were 5. They gave basic information. There was landfall, kicker, quests, allies, / intimidate, and traps. Of course, the tokens, token cards as they show up, there were 11 of them. And, you know, they were for the various things that would create tokens in the set. Watch them. Now, the other thing just to note is, on the backs of these were 13 different advertisements. So, like, for the Angel here, these advertisements were for organized play programs, for the upcoming World Wake, Duel of the Planeswalkers, for Xbox Live, Magic Online, Fat Packs, Planeswalker Guides to Alara, Ultra Pro products, all that kind of stuff that's related to Magic. These were advertisements for, but this Angel could have 13 different packs. I mean, like, if you're a collector of these things and want to get 13 different Angels, you could. Maybe one's better than the other. I don't know. Same with all the other tokens and for the tips or tricks. Interesting little thing of there's a lot of possibilities for different variations on all of these for the 5 tokens, 5 tips and tricks, and 11 tokens. It's a lot. Let's talk mechanics. Let's start with the big one, landfall. It's the major part of this entire thing. It represents the set. It triggers when a land enters the battlefield under a player's control. That's it. I mean, in this set where we had some other things that are important, it is very important because, hey, landfall, really cool, showing off Optimus' fall here. But we had the enemy fetch lands. Now, we've had 2 fetch lands before here. We had the fetch lands that were the original ones back in Mirage that came into play tapped. And then Onslaught brought us the 5 fetch lands that did not come into play tapped. These were better than the original Mirage counterparts. You'd sacrifice them and get 1 of 2 lands. These were the enemy colors. So now we had all 10 different combinations between mana of fetch lands as of Zendikar. That's what introduced it here. It completed the set. And also helped landfall a lot because you get 2 lands out of it. We did have 3 planeswalkers. Nissa Ravane, I mentioned her. But Soren Markov was also first done here. We also had Chandra Ablaze. Now, Chandra Ablaze is just Sandra. It is a version of her. And yeah, this is getting us new versions of planeswalkers being a thing too. We have seen in the future that planeswalkers will have like a dozen or so varieties of the same planeswalker. You know, you only have 1 out at a time of that type, but now we're kind of really developing and getting it, and we introduced these 2 new ones here. But Nissa and Soren. We also get traps, a new subtype for instance. They provide an alternate cost when a specific event happens, like an opponent doing something. In this case, if an opponent has exactly 1 creature attacking you, an alternate cost for the Pitfall Trap here. We were also introduced to a type of card, quests. Quests are enchantments that basically gains counters during specific events. And after they build up to a certain number of counters, you get something out. Now, there are a number of cycles of quests. We'll talk about them when we get into the cycles. But just keep in mind, this is the format of them. Something triggers, puts counters on it. When you got enough counters, you can do something. Luminarch Ascension here is, puts angels in play. Kicker return. Kicker's always a very popular one. It kind of really stole the show during the invasion block. And it makes a return here. It's the idea of mana and stuff, so we have this return of it. And of course, we have a new keyword, functionally replacing the old. Intimidate. So this functionally replaces fear. If you didn't know fear, don't remember it from my old videos. It was a creature can only be blocked by black or artifact creatures. Intimidate says this creature can only be blocked by artifact creatures and creatures that share a color with it. Fear usually showed up on black creatures, hence black creatures couldn't block it, or were the only ones that could block it. In this case, it's just matching its color. It's an extended, different thing of fear. It replaces fear in a lot of ways. Yes, fear could be on other creatures too, for, you know, non-black creatures, which is kind of a little unusual, but I guess it could be. But this was kind of a functional replace of a new color card type, allies. It has an entire mechanic. Again, we'll talk about it with some of the cycles. But it's a group of creatures that have a triggered ability when an ally enters the battlefield. And it's usually dependent on a lot of allies in play, number of allies, all those kind of things. Allies play off of each other. It's basically a good way of thinking about it. The more allies you have, the more allies you play, the better it is. And there is a kind of like subset of types of cards here with a bloodied idea for the vampires. It's basically vampires are boosted when an opponent has 10 or less life, getting basically the hunger of hunting down a wounded prey. Let's talk cycles. There are 13 main cycles in Zendikar. The first 3 are quests. The first are the common quests, the expeditions. Each of them has expedition in their names. They're basically quests that stack around landfall to activate putting counters on it. And once you remove 3 counters, you sacrifice it. So that's the basic idea of it. Put lands into play, put counters on there. Once you've got 3, sacrifice it for an effect. Pretty simple, pretty easy. These are the basic expeditions, our first quests. Our second ones were the uncommon quests. These actually had quests in the name. These were the quests for something, quests for the graveyard. They gain counters under specific conditions, but similar to our expeditions, once they received enough counters for the various quests, you sacrificed it for an effect. Again, Quest for the Graveyard here needs 3 quest counters, like the expeditions, but each of them had their own number of quest counters you needed on it, triggered from their own conditions, and still sacrificing them. We move on to the Ascensions, the 5 sounds. I'm going to tell you, I forgot to mention, cycles are one of every color of a group. So it's like white, blue, black, green, red cards that are grouped together. That's a cycle, a normal cycle. I forgot to remind people of that because it has been a number of years. So this is the green part of the Ascension cycle. There are other cycles we'll talk about this too. Anyway, in this cycle, of course, it's the Ascensions. Rare. Again, they have a specific way of putting counters on them. Once you reach the threshold, you get a bonus. That's it. In this case, Beastmaster's Ascension. When a creature you control attacks, you put a counter on it. If you have 7 or more counters, your creatures get +5/+5. Simple as that. And it's just a thing it has. You just have to get to those 7 quest counters. It can get more quest counters than that. You just have to get to the 7 to get to it. Now we had some kicker cycles, one of each color. The common ones, basically, just common instance with a kicker cost. Pretty simple. You could pay it, have an instant, pay a bonus for a little bit bonus. A little bit better bonus. These were simple there. There was a cycle. There were also stronger ones. These were rare cards that had big giant effects, and their kickers were colorless. Hide Replication, which I showed earlier, is another one of these. And as you can see, it's a colorless cost for a bigger effect. You're already paying a bunch of mana for a big effect, but these were big spells with kicker costs. We had a cycle of landfall pumping creatures. What do I mean by that is each creature would get +2/+2 as their landfall ability. We had one in every color that had this. You put a land into play, it gets +2/+2. There was an equipment adventurer's gear that did the same thing as this cycle, but it's an artifact, it's equipment, so it's kind of outside of it, but it should be noted because it's interesting and kind of parallel to it. We have the 1 mana spell lands. What do I mean by that? These lands come in play tapped. They tap for a mana of their color of the cycle, and they have an effect that effectively would be a 1 mana spell. In this case, for Piranha Marsh, player loses 1 life. That's the kind of thing you pay 1 mana to do. So yeah, it's basically a little like cantrip, little tiny thing that can happen as part of adding these lands into play. And so we had a cycle of these, and they were abilities related to the various colors. This one, black, loss of life. Yeah, makes sense. We had the rare spell lands. What do I mean by the rare spell lands? They enter the battlefield tap for a color. There's the blue one here. They also have an additional ability named after a specific place on Zendikar, but they aren't legendary. So it's sort of like, comes with like tap, you can tap for a mana, and then they have an ability. Gozi here, well, you can see what it does. You put counters on it, skip your next turn, you remove a counter for it, take an extra turn. I'm going to say things that add counters to stuff. It's really nice just to take one skip turn, and then just, proliferate. Proliferate as one that shows up later on, used with that kind of thing. Keep that in mind. We had some three ally cycles. The growing allies, basically they would get +1/+1 counters. One of each color. When an ally comes into play, you get a +1/+1 counter. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward. It was, again, allies common each color. There was uncommon allies that had different abilities. Hagar Diabologist here has players lose life based on your number of allies, but each of them had an ability based on allies. And similarly speaking, there was a rare ally cycle. So a card for each ally you have. Basically, they have a very powerful ally-based ability. Now, going outside the normal color wheel cycles, there are two cycles based on pairings. The first off is the allied pairings, basically colors that are next to each other on the cycle wheel. And these are the refuge land cycles. They're all refuges. They're 5 lands that enter the battlefield tap. They tap for the 2 allied colors. They're functionally reprint of tap lands. The advantage they have over tap lands is you gain a life when they come into play. So they're a little bit better than tap lands, but they are the allied colors. And of course, the enemy-colored fetch lands. Their enemy-colored cycle, we gotta mention them again. You pay 1 life, you sacrifice them, search for a mountain or island, put it in the battlefield. Not tapped! Hey, I just landfalled into 2 lands this turn. Yeah. Now, we have 2 more things to talk about within the cycle ideas. First is a mega cycle that exists within the entire block. There were 6 planeswalkers. 1 multicolored, and 1 cycle of planeswalkers of every color. In the Zendikar block, we got 3 of those. The black, red, and green Sorin Markov we got here. We would get the blue one in Worldwake, and the white one in Rise of the Eldrazi to get a full cycle throughout the block of planeswalkers involved in the storyline that was going on that are monocolor. Another thing is we do have a matching pair with one of the other sets. Cliffthreader here is a 2/1 core with a landwalk ability that matches with another one from Worldwake, Marsh Treader, who has Swamp Walk, who is Mountain. So, there's our basically cycles, pairs, etc. We did have some reprints. There were 5 cards reprinted in this set, which isn't a lot. That's not a huge amount of cards reprinted, but we did see one. Harrow here is a very good example, originally from Tempest. But there was also Cancel, Demolish, Mindsled, and Riverbone, which were all reprints from older cards and older sets that we see now in Zendikar. Now we do also have some functional reprints. I'm going to show off one here. What a functional reprint is, it's the same card, new name almost. Well, actually, that's what it is exactly. Same card, new name. In this course, Filmhorde Elder from Ice Age is reprinted as Greenweaver Druid, but Molten Ravager replaced, basically as a reprint of Storm Shaman, Pillarfield Ox of Foot Soldier, Reckless Scholar of Cephalid Looter, and Shatterskull Giant of Lowland Giant. So, yeah, they're the same card, just different name, different art, different style, but the same card, functional. We did have some near functional reprints too, 2 of them, including Paralyzing Grasp to Glimmer Dust Now. How is this slightly different? The Paralyzing Grasp is better. It's enchant creature instead of enchant tapped creature. So you can see, it's functionally doing the exact same thing, it's just slightly better. Similarly, Living Tsunami was also a functional reprint of Waterspout Djinn. It just changed from untapped removing. It basically involved islands returning to your hand. One was untapped islands, Living Tsunami. They don't have to be untapped. You can tap the island and then... There was one card that was color shifted. What does color shifted mean? It's the exact same card except different color. So it's like the functional reprint, or the near functional reprint. It's actually more closer to the functional reprint, except it's just a different color. Mire Blight is Mortal Wound, it's just in black instead of green. There are some notable cards to talk about. Of course, I have mentioned, and I won't throw them out there again because they are very, very notable. The enemy fetch lands. We cannot forget that they came from this set. Vampire Hexmage was part of a lot of powerful combos. Things like Dark Depths, which had been out earlier, where you can remove all the tokens from it. Yeah. Bloodghast was a vampire that had a lot of tournament play because it involved stuff involving graveyards. Halo Hunter was notorious. Basically, during this time period, another angel that existed was Baneslayer Angel, with protection from demons and dragons, which was in Standard at the time this came out, which countered it completely. A little bit of jokes there. Lorthos. Lorthos the Tiger, the legendary octopus, which is an octopus as it gets. There are 8 instances of 8 on this card. 8 of them. Thumbs up if you can find them. Lorthos is great. Warren Investigator. A powerful card, Goblin Lackey, that had been banned previously and extended, was similar to this one. It gets you 2 goblins instead of 1 when it damages. It's got double strike. But because it's larger claws, slower, it wasn't seen as being as powerful as Goblin Lackey. But it basically does the same thing, only slightly better, but again, not as much speed. Goblin Guide made a lot of one-turn plays that was very popular for burn decks, despite an opponent possibly drawing land. And of course, Felidar Sovereign introduces an alternate win condition. At the beginning of the game, if at the beginning of your upkeep, you have 40 more life, you win the game. It's alternate win condition. You solve it. Lotus Cobra. It was paid very heavily in Standard when it was legal, because it has some mana fixing. Basically, you get some extra mana of a color for having Landball. Very helpful. Oracle of Moldiah. It was a part of Standard ramp decks. Honestly speaking, it's not a bad ramp card in general. You know, you play the top card of your library revealed, you played its land, you play additional land. I don't see it as much anymore, probably. There might have been replacements, even since I played. But I was playing a lot during this time period for the next decade. Oracle was pretty big. So I can understand this one being pretty important. Now, granted, could have been replaced in the last X years, but still. Of course, we have Spell Pierce. Spell Pierce is a popular counterspell. It's actually popular that it's a lot of sideboards and sees play in basically every format. It's very simple counterspell and highly potent. So we see it a lot. Emiria the Sky Ruin. I mean, I don't really have to say more about this. It's a very good rate game one. It's been in some modern decks. It's got a lot of upsides. It's, if you control 7 or more planes, you get a creature back every turn. It's pretty good. Mirror is very good. That's not legendary. I mean, you get 4 creatures back. Vampire Nighthawk. Anytime this thing is in Standard, it's getting used a lot. Basically, it's got 3 keywords. Flying, Death Touch, Light Flame. And it is a standard for black decks whenever it's legal in Standard. It's pretty good. Again, you don't see it much outside of Standard, because again, you can't play in Pauper, and it's not particularly best, but in the Standard kind of format, it certainly is really good. We'll probably block formats, I would see it too. Mindbreak Trap is a heavily sideboard card in Modern, Legacy, and Vintage. It stops combo decks. That's why it's important in sideboards. If you're playing against a combo deck, you got one fight against them, you've seen their combo, you pull in your Mindbreak Traps. You put in your sideboard, because then you're ready to stop combos. And of course, our favorite, Day of Judgment. What does it say Judgment on there? It does say Day of Judgment. But it still says in strange places of Day of Judgment in some places, which is very weird. I'm not going to lie, there is a version of this card that says Day of Judgment. It's interesting enough to see that the... let me see what it is. No, it is Day of... It's Day of Judgment. It is Day of Judgment. I'm trying to put the E in there, so my brain wants to put it. Yeah, sorry. Day of Judgment. It basically was a replacement for Wrath of God. But it's also, I think it should be Judgment, and it's Judgment. My brain wants to add that E in there, but it's not there. It's not there. It's Judgment. Judgment. Judgment? Yeah, no. It's not spelled right. And I'm curious as to, it's such a weird little thing that people say. Anyway. Maybe it's just a joke that's misspelled. Take a trip. Okay, are we ready to get to the last bit here? We've got a couple more to go. Anyway, let's talk about Active Trap and Heathen Guard, because these were pretty big in modern decks that dealt around milling. These are really good mill cards. We got both of them here. So they show up a lot in milling decks. Vine of Vastwood is an interesting one. It's a pump spell. It's in Modern, Legacy, and Pauper. Pauper effect deck's really big. But it's also noticeable because it has an ability here that's not hexproof, but, in a way, better. Its wording is it can prevent spells an opponent plays, right? Target creature can't be the target of spells or ability your opponents control this turn. I can target my opponent's creatures. If they're targeting one of their creatures with a spell, I can cast Vines of Vastwood, and now the spell is illegal. Putting it on the stack. That's why it's illegal. That's why it shows in Modern, Legacy, and Pauper. Goblin Bushwhacker has its namesake, the 8-whack deck archetype, and its various offshoots in a lot of formats like Pioneer, Modern, and Pauper. So it has it basically is a lot of creatures, Bushwhacker to pump a lethal swing. Journey into Nowhere is an Oblivion Ring type spell that had a lot of play in Standard, and is one of the best removal spells in Pauper. Pyromancer Ascension, really good in spell-based decks. And of course, Mindless Gnaw, which is infamously weak with a very funny origin. Mark Rosewater intended this to be 2 mana, but someone accidentally wrote down 3, and they kept the new cost as a joke. Yeah. Mindless Gnaw, it's a joke economy. Let's talk banned and restricted cards from this set. Well, some of these still are banned in various places, others have been banned before it had been removed. Punishing Fire, here, was banned in Modern since December of 2011. Pretty big one there. So it's still banned in Modern. Expedition Map, which was pretty strong, was banned in Pauper in 2020, but eventually unbanned in 2022. Basically, it was part of some combos. It was seen that it was not the most important part of the combo. They basically unbanned it and banned other parts of the various combos that were more efficient targets. Volcult the Molten Principle was part of a lot of different combos in Extended, and some finishing ramp decks in Standard. It was so strong that when Modern came out, it was preemptively banned. But it was eventually unbanned in 2012, and has seen some play in some decks since then. So it was banned for a number of years. Spreading Seas basically has seen a lot of play in a lot of places. It was banned preemptively in the historic format when it was printed in Wilds of Eldraine's Tales bonus sheet. So yeah, basically in historic, it's banned because it's seen a lot of play in a lot of places and proven itself in a lot of places. And of course, my good friend down here, Iona Sheet of Emeria. You know where this is banned? Commander. It's been played in Legacy, Standard, Modern, but in Commander, casual format, where splashing doesn't function, and where locking would be very powerful, it's not legal. Very obvious reasons. It shuts down an entire color. Hey, your deck's just blue? I shut down blue. So, very understandable why. Finally, let's talk to intro packs, just to finish out today. These are your starter decks. These are decks you get to get into Magic, to try it out, to see some things. 2 are monocolored, 3 are bicolored. Let's talk about each of them a little bit. These are the I have to pick up and play. Nowadays, a lot of times, sets have commander decks. These were just normal decks back in the day. We haven't reached that point in time where they're selling commander decks. Core Armory was the white one. It's pure white. It's focused on equipment as its theme. Its rares were Armament Master, which was your holographic foil, and Conqueror's Village. Pumped Up, our second one. That one was blue-red. It was focused on direct damage. That's down there in the middle. It had Hellkite Charger's holographic foil and Rite of Replication as its other one. So it was very direct damage, fire, lightning, kind of hitting things, burning your opponents. Rise of the Vampires is our pure black deck, our other monocolored deck, and it just deals with a vampire tribal theme. It's pretty simple that. Army of the Undead fighting the creatures, using their abilities. Malkir Blood Witch with their holographic foil, and Blood Tribute was the other rare that was in the box. Then we have the Adventurers, the red-green deck. This had ally tribal theme, so this is red-green allies. You could probably expand this one in more colors for more allies and stuff like that. But again, it's ally theme. We're the Turntimber Rager as your holographic foil, and Kazul Warlord, rare one I showed earlier, as your rares instead. And finally, we have the blue-green unstable terrain, which is our Landfall deck. Yes, we have a Landfall deck that's being sold here to show it off. We're showing off vampires, allies, burn, some equipment, or a lot of equipment, and of course, Landfall. That's a very important one to kind of show off here. I mean, Landfall is a big part of this entire deck. The Sphinx of Jawar Island is their foil, and Royal Elemental is your other one. Royal Elemental might do steel stuff. It's still pretty good in Landfall stuff. I'm just going to say I like them a lot, and I still use it sometimes. Anyway, but yeah. That was, or is, the Zendikar set. It's an interesting set. It's a very big set, and it's the start of a new block. Start of a new plane. We're introduced to things. Are there major changes mechanically, spiritually, etc., wise, direction-wise, with Magic, with the Zendikar block? I'm going to say, not really. We do add the big story elements of the Eldrazi, which we do address in a number of places overall. Our various trips to Zendikar and the cards in the future will deal with the Eldrazi, and we will see them in other places in the future. Again, we may or may not see them from now on, but it's an interesting addition that came about as part of this block that added the story elements. Mechanically, yeah, we see some returns, we see some big things that are like, oh hey, we now have Intimidate. Landfall is an interesting one. There are some concepts that didn't really spread as much here, but are in existence. There's a lot of interesting things here when we look at this set history. But Zendikar is also just the intro to the Zendikar block, for one thing, but to Zendikar. It's not made to have a major story. Sure, there is a story amongst the cards. You can definitely see that. Again, there's a book about the entire block that focuses a third on here because it's a third of the set. But it is, more than anything, here is Zendikar. This is what it's like. This is what the people are like. This is what they're doing. These are all the beings. These are all the places. This is Zendikar. That's what the Zendikar set is. An introduction to the plane and a new story with it. Kind of like how we got into this with our stories in the Alara block. It's the same way. We're getting an introduction to it. Into the Ravnica block. Into the Mirrodin block. These are introducing us to new planes, showing us it. We're not looking to maybe revisit as much right now. We're looking to show, embrace, expand the greater multiverse. That's what Zendikar does. It expands the greater multiverse of Magic. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed today. I wanted to revisit these videos because, honestly speaking, I had done a lot of them in the past. I did a whole bunch of them. I didn't know how much and how big these videos would be overall, but they were fun to do. They just sucked to edit and put together when I put them up on my channel so many years ago. Now, with my kind of format I'm doing now, it's actually pretty easy and fun to do. So, yeah. I hope you enjoyed this boring video. I'm going to do more of them. We got more things to do. Expect to learn more of the history of these various sets. You know, Worldwake's going to come up, Rise of the Eldrazi, all the other little products that are in between. We're going to talk about all of them, all the sets as we keep going. We're only in 2009. I don't think I'm going to be catching up, but maybe I'll get close. Maybe. We'll see. Who knows? Yeah. Remember to check out all my stuff. If you haven't joined me anywhere, just give that basic follow. Like, subscribe, ring the bell, all that stuff. Follow if you're over on Twitch, all those other things on YouTube. Let me know, what's your experience with Zendikar? It's interesting because I, in fact, only got a little bit of the Zendikar block. I really came back to Magic during the Scars block, but some of my friends were getting back into it during Zendikar. So eventually, I did jump back into it after that time. it took me a little bit to do, but they basically reintroduced me to it in a little bit of ways with the coming back. It was nice to see these things, you know? And again, Scars Block was the big one after this, so, you know, next big block, that's when I came back. Still had some chance to buy some of it. Not a lot. My schedule's up on Discord, Twitter, YouTube. I do have a Discord, Twitter if you're looking for social media, everything I'm doing. Big shows I can shout out. Crimson Queen on Wednesdays at 8. EST. Discussing Table Out Saturdays at 6. Check those things out. Those are my bigger shows. I do recommend those. Those do eventually go up on YouTube too, so I recommend if you can't catch us live. It's really good. Yeah, you can always catch us there later on. And yeah. I think that's all my shout outs. I can't remember anything else to say, because I'm forgetful anyway. But yeah. Thank you for coming back on this journey with me. We'll have more of these in the future. But until the next time we talk about another set, another visit to the worlds of Magic the Gathering, I bid you a deep and wonderful farewell.